Introduction: when a crime thriller meets a cosmic mess. Today we are looking at The Gone World by Tom Sweterlitsch, a novel that begins like an NCIS case file and ends like the universe has been run through a blender set to existential dread. It is a book that refuses to behave itself, which is refreshing compared to the endless parade of thrillers where the biggest twist is that the killer was someone with a pulse. Sweterlitsch opens with a murder and a missing girl, which seems manageable in theory, but he immediately ruins your sense of security by informing you that the future has already collapsed. Not only that, but every time someone checks on it, the collapse moves closer. It is almost like the universe has a calendar app with a glitch. The result is a reading experience that feels grounded and bewildering at the same time. You start the book with confidence and finish it checking your own timeline for cracks. The setup: Shannon Moss and the case from hell. Our guide through this cheerful landscape is Shannon Moss, an NCIS special agent whose job description already sounds stressful before you add temporal trauma. She is assigned to investigate the murder of a Navy SEAL's family and the disappearance of his teenage daughter. The case should be straightforward, which is usually the moment in fiction when something profoundly awful happens. The awful thing here is that the SEAL was linked to a classified program that uses deep space travel to peek at the future, and every peek has shown the same catastrophic event. The program compulsively looks again, as if trying to confirm a bad Yelp review about the universe. Moss knows that anything connected to this project tends to get stranger by the minute, so she approaches the case with a mix of focus, dread, and emotional scar tissue. It becomes clear very quickly that this missing girl investigation is tangled in the same knot that is dragging all futures toward destruction. The protagonist, a woman held together by strength and sheer willpower. Shannon Moss is one of the most compelling elements of the book because she is not a cardboard detective with perfect instincts. She is a survivor of earlier missions into unstable futures, and those missions have worn her down physically and psychologically. Moss keeps moving anyway, mostly out of determination and the mild suspicion that sitting still will let Terminus catch up faster. Her humanity is what anchors the book. While the timelines fracture and the future dissolves into static, she continues to care about individual lives, especially the missing girl at the heart of the investigation. Her interactions with colleagues add depth because she is respected, doubted, feared, or pitied depending on who you ask. Moss's resilience gives the story emotional weight, and her internal fractures mirror the collapsing futures she keeps trying to navigate. Structure: a timeline held together by hope and obligatory government paperwork. Sweterlitsch structures the novel in a way that mirrors the story's internal chaos. The timeline jumps between the present and various possible futures, each one more catastrophic than the last. These futures are called invariants, although calling them invariant feels generous given how quickly everything collapses in them. Moss brings information back from these futures to help solve the present-day case, which sounds helpful until you realize that every mission adds a layer of contradiction. This is the kind of book where you feel clever for understanding a scene, and then a later chapter reveals that you understood nothing. The structure forces you to pay attention, but it also rewards you with patterns, emotional echoes, and slowly accumulating terror. The closer Moss gets to answers, the nearer Terminus creeps, almost as if the timeline itself resents being examined. Worldbuilding: the apocalypse is run by administrators. The speculative worldbuilding in The Gone World feels disturbingly plausible, because the time travel element is embedded in military bureaucracy. The Deep Waters program is what happens when you take government procedure, add physics, and then let people look at something they really should not. Missions to the future involve relativistic travel, so you do not need to imagine a magical time machine. You only need to imagine a space program run by people who have not been told the full truth about what they are investigating. The apocalyptic event known as Terminus appears in every timeline with irritating consistency, like a cosmic pop-up ad. The chilling part is that it arrives earlier each time the future is observed. Sweterlitsch does not treat this as a puzzle for readers to solve. Instead, he presents it as an existential weight that crushes the characters as effectively as any monster. Themes: why everything is falling apart and what that says about us. One major theme in The Gone World is inevitability. Terminus arrives no matter what choices are made, which raises uncomfortable questions about free will. It is like reading a thriller where every route leads to the same locked door. Another theme is trauma. Moss's fractured perception of time reflects her fractured emotional state. The book uses the instability of the future to illustrate the instability inside her. Institutional secrecy is another recurring theme. Deep Waters operates behind dense layers of classification, which allows moral compromises to flourish unchecked. Anyone who has ever wondered whether government programs sometimes make things worse will find plenty to think about here. These themes do not sit politely in the background. They saturate every part of the story and give the novel both intellectual and emotional weight. Style and atmosphere: bleak, beautiful, and uncomfortably quiet. Sweterlitsch writes with a blend of precision and abstraction that gives the novel a unique tone. The present-day scenes feel concrete and familiar, while the future landscapes have a smeared, dreamlike quality. It is the kind of contrast that keeps you off balance, because the ordinary world looks more fragile each time Moss returns from a mission. The atmosphere is bleak from start to finish, but it is never cheap or manipulative. Horror creeps in through implication rather than spectacle. The pacing tightens as the story unfolds, yet the prose never loses control or flair. Sweterlitsch knows exactly how much to reveal at each moment, which keeps the dread simmering without overwhelming the narrative. The result is a book that feels heavy, elegant, and impossible to ignore. Criticisms. A few inconvenient truths. This is not a book for every reader. The fractured timeline may confuse people who prefer clean chronological progression. The bleakness of the future scenes can feel emotionally draining, and some readers may struggle with the unrelenting tone. A few supporting characters feel more like thematic devices than fully realized individuals. There are moments when the time mechanics stretch comprehension to its limits, and some readers may find the ending too ambiguous for comfort. None of these issues ruin the book, but they do mark it as a story aimed at a particular type of reader. If you want cheerful escapism, you may wish to look elsewhere. Final thoughts. A thriller with teeth and an existential crisis. The Gone World is an ambitious hybrid that blends crime investigation, speculative physics, and cosmic dread into something dark, memorable, and deeply unsettling. It rewards careful reading, and it lingers long after you close the final page. Shannon Moss is a brilliant protagonist whose personal fractures reflect the fractures in the timelines she navigates. The future sequences are atmospheric and terrifying, the themes resonate with uncomfortable power, and the structure pushes the reader to stay engaged. This is not a gentle story, but it is an exceptional one. If you enjoy fiction that challenges you, unsettles you, and makes you wonder whether the future is already falling apart, then this book is absolutely worth your time.